Work smarter. Work smarter, not harder.
Everyone believes hard work is the answer. Work longer, push harder, sacrifice more. Our culture celebrates exhaustion. If you're tired, it means you're trying. If you're busy, it means you're important. If you're struggling, it means success must be close. But there is a quiet truth that most people never learn. Hard work can build success, but hard work alone can also destroy life. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a man who believed effort was everything, until one small lesson showed him the difference between working hard and working wisely. In a small coastal town in Oregon lived a man named Daniel Brooks. Daniel was 34 years old. He owned a small fishing business that he inherited from his father. The business was simple, a small boat, basic fishing equipment, and a dream to grow it into something bigger. Daniel believed in one principle above everything else: outwork everyone. Every morning, Daniel woke up at 3:30 a.m. While the town was still dark and silent, he was already preparing his boat. He would sail into the cold ocean before sunrise. Most fishermen returned by noon. Daniel stayed until evening, sometimes 12 hours on the water, sometimes 14 hours. The ocean wind burned his skin. Salt water cracked his hands. But Daniel wore his exhaustion with pride. "This is the price of success," he often said. At night, he returned home too tired to talk, too tired to eat properly, too tired to spend time with his wife Emma. Emma would watch him collapse into bed and quietly say, "Daniel, you can't keep doing this forever." Daniel always gave the same answer: success requires sacrifice. The strange thing was this: despite working longer than anyone in the harbor, Daniel was barely making enough money to survive. His boat needed repairs. His savings were disappearing. Every month felt like a fight. Meanwhile, another fisherman in the same harbor seemed to live a completely different life. His name was Lucas. Lucas was the same age as Daniel. He owned a similar boat, but Lucas only worked 6 hours a day. He left the harbor at sunrise and returned before afternoon. In the evenings, he walked with his family along the beach. He exercised. He read books. He even took vacations. And somehow, Lucas made twice the profit Daniel did. Every time Daniel saw Lucas relaxing at sunset, something twisted inside him. How was that possible? Daniel worked twice as hard. One autumn morning, the ocean turned violent. A sudden storm hit the coast. Most fishermen stayed in the harbor, but Daniel went out anyway, because Daniel believed stopping meant losing. The waves grew larger. The wind grew colder. After 10 exhausting hours fighting the ocean, Daniel finally returned. But when he counted his catch, it was one of the worst days of the year. Almost nothing. That night, Daniel sat alone on the dock. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerous. Not anger, not frustration, but doubt. He whispered quietly to himself, "Why is this not working?" At that moment, Lucas walked past him. Lucas noticed Daniel's tired face and sat beside him. "You look like the ocean won today," Lucas said gently. Daniel forced a tired laugh. The ocean always wins. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Daniel said something he had never said before. "I don't understand something. I work more hours than anyone here. But you work half the time and make twice the money." How Lucas looked at the harbor lights reflecting on the water. Then he said, "Come with me tomorrow morning." The next day, Lucas invited Daniel onto his boat. They sailed out together just after sunrise. Daniel watched carefully. Lucas worked calmly. No rushing, no stress. After an hour, Lucas pulled in his fishing lines. Daniel was shocked. Lucas had already caught more fish than Daniel usually caught in 3 hours. How? Daniel asked. Lucas smiled. Then he walked to a small metal box attached to the side of the boat. Inside was a device Daniel had never seen before. "This," Lucas said, "is a sonar fish finder. It shows where fish are moving under the water. Daniel stared at the screen. Small moving shapes appeared beneath their boat. You mean, you can see where the fish are? Lucas nodded. I don't chase the ocean blindly. I follow information. Daniel felt embarrassed. For 10 years he had been fishing the same way his father did, guessing, waiting, working harder, every season. Lucas continued explaining. Most people believe success comes from effort, but effort without direction wastes energy. Then Lucas shared 3 simple principles. First, systems beat effort. I invested in tools that multiply my work. My sonar shows fish movement. My nets are designed for efficiency. I spend less energy but catch more. Second strategy beats hustle. I focus on the best fishing hours. Early morning when fish rise near the surface, you fish all day. But many of those hours produce almost nothing. Third, rest creates clarity. When you're exhausted, you stop thinking, you just react. But when your mind is clear, you see patterns others miss. Lucas looked at Daniel seriously. You're not failing because you're lazy. You're failing because you're only using effort. There is a difference between motion and progress. That sentence stayed in Daniel's mind all night. Motion and progress. The next morning, Daniel did something unusual. He didn't rush to the ocean. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table with Emma and a notebook. For the first time in years, he asked himself a different question. Not, how can I work harder, but how can I work smarter? Over the next few weeks, Daniel began making changes. Small changes, but powerful ones. He bought a basic sonar device. He studied ocean patterns and fish behavior. He stopped fishing during empty hours. Instead of working 14 hours, he worked 7 focused hours. Daniel also hired a young helper from the harbor during peak days. This freed time for planning and maintenance. Slowly, something surprising happened. Daniel's catches began to improve. Not dramatically at first, but steadily. His income grew, his stress decreased. And for the first time in years, Daniel came home with energy. He had dinner with Emma. They walked along the beach at sunset. Something had shifted. 6 months later, the winter season arrived. Daniel reviewed his records. Compared to the previous year, his profit had increased 40%, but he was working half the hours. One evening, Lucas visited Daniel's boat. He looked around and smiled. You learned the lesson. Daniel nodded. I spent 10 years swinging harder, but I never stopped to sharpen the blade. Lucas laughed softly. That's how most people live. And that brings us to the real lesson of this story. Many people believe success belongs to the people who suffer the most, the ones who work the longest, the ones who sacrifice everything. But the truth is simpler. Hard work is important, but strategy turns effort into results. So remember 3 things. Before you work harder, ask if a smarter system exists. Focus on the few actions that create the most value. And never forget that rest is not laziness. Rest keeps your mind sharp enough to think, because success rarely comes from exhaustion. It comes from clarity. So ask yourself today, are you swinging harder or sharpening your axe? Sometimes the smallest shift in thinking can change the direction of your entire life. And sometimes working less can finally help you achieve more. If this story made you think, take a moment to reflect. What is one task in your life that you could do smarter instead of harder? Share it in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that reveal powerful life lessons like this, consider subscribing. There are many more stories ahead, stories that may quietly change the way you see work, success, and life.